Good morning, everyone. This is update for August 28, 2022, day 186 of the war, end of the date update. So first, we'll touch a little bit on the energy situation. So there's a company called Win Energie in Austria. So apparently this is a power generation company that's located somewhere near Wien in Austria, which is capital of Austria, and they are asking for essentially bailout of 1.7 billion euros in order to continue their operations. So basically, the way it's worded, it's kind of like euphemism. It says, "Oh, we need some liquidity to continue operating." What this really means that the company is essentially bankrupt and needs infusion from the government to continue operating. And they are apparently operator of their power generation facilities in around Vienna, in Austria. So this is another sort of potential, well, not potential, actually victim of this situation. And similar situation is happening with their German company called Uniper, which is a natural gas distribution company, and they were essentially getting their natural gas from Russia and distributing to large German industrial, just general consumers. So, which is also bankrupt essentially, and probably going to get bailed out by the government. Uh, and the same situation is going on in Austria. It's going to probably going to get bailed out by the government. The problem is with all of these bailouts that does not create natural gas, so the situation remains extremely difficult, and probably everybody seeing in their life now that situation is not going in the right direction. Let's put this one. And a bigger problem is that there are no actions to change the economic policy course so that this situation can be remediated. So essentially, there is specifically more in Europe, there is this focus. We will keep going in the same direction, even though it creates problems for us, and we don't want to change. So for that reason, we probably expect more problems and pain, economic pain, in Europe, and hopefully it doesn't get to the social unrest situation there. Now let's actually talk a little bit about Ukraine, but called internal politics, military situation, and the heavy losses of Ukrainian army. So there is a basically there was one very open discussion in, well, not open, but yeah, open discussion in Ukrainian society. There was basically post of one of the defenders of Pisky. I believe he's battalion commander, where he is basically openly calling that Ukrainian leadership is incompetent, political and military leadership is incompetent, and the basically army is totally unprepared, untrained. There are a lot of problems of interaction between artillery, air support, and the infantry support, and that's the biggest reason for Ukrainian army failures in defending the ground, and that basically the whole strategy of rigid defense and holding strongholds by by and not getting support from artillery or air support leads to extremely high human losses. And so he, for example, quoted that they lost 500 up to 500 soldiers dead defending Pisky over like 20-day period of time. So 20 days. It's starting. The attack on Pisky started about on July 27, 28. So over 20 day period, they lost 500 dead, up to 500 dead. That really means that probably another 1,500 wounded. So the total loss is close to 2,000 2,000 people just in that village. It is very important, was very important stronghold for Ukrainian defenses. It was kind of important sort of cornerstone in Ukrainian defense line there, which, as for those who are viewing it, has been lost about 5 or 10 days ago. So what he's saying is that they won't get proper artillery support. So or when they get it, the the crews were totally incompetent. They would shoot like 800 meters sort of away from the target. He was even joking that target doesn't even understand that it's being shot at by Ukrainian artillery. And then he said that the closest they would get to the actual target is about 80 meters away. So the target finally understands that it's being shot at. So, well, as you can see from all of this, it's very clear there's the system doesn't work in terms of Ukrainian army, in terms of leadership, basically. Not only Ukrainian army, because it's all coming from the very top, from Ukrainian president. So that's where the incompetence starts. Let's put it this way, and then it kind of trickles down everywhere. So just sort of related situation. Now Ukrainian president is actively, let's say, pursuing one of the generals who used to be deputy commander of Ukrainian Special Forces, and then he was on National Defense Council before the war, where he was fired by the president. Then he was actually defending one of the airports in Kiev, the Zhulyany Airport. It's inside of the Kiev. For those who viewed the videos from like early July about the defense, about the first, let's say, 3 or 4 days of the war, you can see there was 4 key airports or airports slash air bases around Kiev. So 2 of them were just regular passenger airports. One was military airport, and another one was a military air base. So Russian troops attacked those 2 military ones. They didn't attack the passenger ones. Nevertheless, he was in charge of defending one of the passenger ones. So now he is actually being charged and prosecuted and for defending that airport without permission or something like that. So it tells you like that people who were trying to do right things now getting punished actually. And he did have like order from the head of from the head of Ukrainian army. So basically it's absolute mess, and in such a mess, there is no way Ukraine can defend itself successful. And it all, as we discussed, it all sort of trickles down to the front line where you have incompetent artillery crews that couldn't even shoot right. Not to mention that this attack on Piski was essentially the only large attack in their sort of almost entire front line, plus the attack in the North Donbass section. But that was very concentrated attack because Russian troops don't have enough resources to sort of spread there to attack, to create strong attacks in many places, right? So there was very focused attack. Ukrainian army received, we discussed this many times, very advanced weapons relative to what Russia has, relative to what Ukraine has, specifically those self-propelled howitzers, crabs. Then what's that? From Germany, PH-2000. Then from Caesars from France, and I think Susanna too from Slovakia or Czech Republic, don't remember. But in any case, Ukraine has total advantage in this super precise, high distance, long range artillery systems. This attack that Russia sort of maintained was all just artillery firewall, and it's using old Soviet howitzers, which most of them are even not mobile. It's all, they stationary, they sit there like a dogs for days, and they're not moving. And this can be easily picked up and destroyed if those howitzers, self-propelled howitzers, were used properly, but they were not. So they basically, these defenders were left to themselves essentially, with and they had to become public, to make the public sort of like pause and speak publicly about this in order to draw attention. And the problem was, what happened is, when they announced that, hey, we have a problem here, it wasn't like, oh, okay, we're going to solve the problem. It actually was, the initial reaction from Ukrainian top was, okay, what do we do to shut them up and sort of like not resolve the problem. So this is the situation. That's why you're seeing so many, like there's so many problems in terms of defending, so many problems in ability to. That's why Ukrainian army cannot attack. Basically, that's one of the main reasons. Hopefully, it gives you a little bit of flavor of understanding of the problems in Ukrainian army. And actually related to this, because I received email from one of the viewers talking about the problems in their international legion in Ukraine, where people complaining that they were strong on the front line without much support, and they basically were like shooting targets for the Russian artillery. So this is not exception to this. Is international legion is not special in this case. It's like everybody's experience. Everybody who's in the front line experiences the same. So they're going through the same experience. So that's not like, there was somehow purposely sort of, how to say, basically there was no sort of purpose to sort of fully closest to them or anything. This is general incompetence of Ukrainian command. Basically the lack of training for artillery units, lack of actually communication and ability to work together as a system between infantry, artillery support, and air support. So that does not work, and that's where it stems. All of this stems from, and it stems from the very top, because this can be only fixed from the very, very top, and it's driven by the very top. So hopefully that explains a little bit about sort of problems on the Ukrainian side. Russia has problems, similar problems, but the sort of the advantage that they have is huge amount of resources relative to Ukraine. So they can be bad, they can be poor in this ways, in many ways too. I'm not saying that our Russian army is perfect, but they can afford that. So that's a huge difference between Ukraine cannot afford to be the same as Russia, basically, because then it means automatically that Ukraine has lost the war for sure. And this war is not about, Donbass region here, these two areas in Crimea. It's about getting control of the entire Ukraine by Russia. And so, which was declared in many instances by everybody in Russia. By the way, there was another poll in Russia that shows between 70 to 80% support for the current policies and for the for Russian president, and so on. Many viewers probably will say, "Hey, yeah, this is probably, false numbers or anything." We would say that, yeah, probably 70-80% is not true. At the same time, there is strong support as well, probably 50% and slightly above in Russia of the war. Most of the majority of the population approves that. Even right now, when the sanctions start to slowly bite, people start to see the problems. They still support the course of the current Russian leadership at large. We're not saying that everybody's there is the same, but at large there is that support there. Then there was another analysis by some Russian expert about their artillery shells. So, and this is we're just sharing it the face value. We don't know if it's true or not, but because there's such a lack of any numbers, that at least puts some perspective. It might be wrong, but at least it's just starting point, I would say. So if you remember, we shared that Russia has a lot of artillery shells or just general ammunition because it was all stockpiled from the Soviet time. Some of it went bad, obviously, during the passage of time, but they still have extremely large and considerable stockpiles of ammunition. And so, based on this experts' estimates, the Russia has spent so far half of its stockpile, and I think he put the total stockpile at 15 million units of artillery shells of all calibers, meaning mostly it's 122, 152, and also mortar mines, 120 and 82 millimeter. So, and at this clip, it means the war probably wouldn't, like Russia would not have enough artillery shells to continue this pace for another 6 months or so. And the Russian internal production is about 1.5 million per year of artillery shells. So what we discussed before is that Ukraine does not have resources to continue this war for years, as many say in the West and elsewhere, and Russia does not have that. So eventually, this probably maybe another 6 months of this war, maybe at most 9, and somehow there will be some resolution because both sides will be super exhausted. Not to mention that Ukraine is, as you can see from this story in Pisky, that it's losing huge number of people, and it's simply unsustainable. Not just from perspective of number of people, but also how it affects psychology of the population and just generally everybody inside of the country. And for that reason, that's why we mentioned many times before that both countries are heading to their 1917 moments, which is this is reference to the first revolution in the Russian Empire in February of 1917, and then the coup in October of 1917. Whether they both get there is unclear, but they definitely quite far along the way to get there. Now let's actually quickly walk through the front line. There's not many changes. Situation is more or less just artillery shelling along the front line. So first, let's start in a clockwise fashion from the very north, and then we'll go down south. The situation along the state border more or less the same, relatively quiet in terms of exchange of artillery fire. Now, the situation east of Kharkiv is also more or less the same. Russian command is trying now to expand this buffer, apparently in this kind of call it western direction, basically kind of capture this village Udi and essentially this whole area. As we explained before, the large regional center Belgorod is right here, so which is about 30 kilometers from Ukrainian border, and they just want to create buffers so Ukrainian army cannot attack as easily Belgorod as before. Now let's move south to Izyum bridgehead, where we showed surprising actual advances by Ukrainian troops that happened probably about over past couple weeks. We also would like to. There is another confirmation here. So they didn't happen today. This is just another confirmation that the Russian troops were even more closer squeezed on this, and Ukrainian troops somewhere north of Dmitrivka, essentially their position. Then in terms of village Dolginka, it's actually disputed. So there, it looks like southern portion of it is controlled by Ukrainian troops and northern by Russian. So Russia, this is actually where Russian troops were attempted attack today with idea of capturing all of the Dovhinki, which was not successful. The same situation is in Bohorodechne. Southern portion is controlled by Ukrainian troops, northern is by Russians. So again, there was attack there as well. Now let's move south. Let's see what's going on the North Donbass section of the front line. So things actually in this northern section of North Donbass were quiet, with exception of artillery shelling, which is, but there were no sort of infantry tank attacks in this area. Now let's actually look. The only part where there were attacks are in this southern section of it, where essentially it's all Wagner mercenaries. They were attempting sort of to kind of squeeze Ukraine troops out of this area, because not in sort of Russian command's idea, they would like to attack Bakhmut from the south. Apparently, they tried from the east, and it doesn't really work. So they're attempting to kind of gain this ground and then attack from the south, or maybe then also push here and kind of create this typical salient that they try to implement everywhere. Also update on this village Kadema. So it was not captured by Russian troops. They are essentially on eastern outskirts of the village. So they basically kind of like have a foot in the door kind of situation in the village, but they definitely did not capture this village. Now let's move south. Let's see what's going on west of Donetsk. And this is this village Piski that we were discussing earlier today, and discussing that it costed around 500 dead and probably another 1,500 wounded soldiers for Ukrainian army. And there were, like, again, Russian attacks in this area. They didn't gain anything. And another area of attack was Pavlivka here. But there's obviously artillery shelling along the entire front line, with, as always, exceptionally strong is near Piski, because Russian command is continuing their attempts to punch through Ukrainian defenses here and kind of like get into operating area, and then really exploit this whole breakthrough. So this is village Piski here. So this is where we're talking about 500 dead just to defend this village. And the only attack is towards this village Nevetsky here at this point. Now let's, and as you can see, the situation hasn't changed since August 21st. Now let's move to Zaporizhia front line. Things here are more or less stable without any changes, essential changes. We actually uncovered a couple more Ukrainian brigades, and one of them is 61st. We're not 100% sure that it's here, but that's most likely where they are. And we're actually labeling, because there is actually 110th Mechanized Brigade, and then there is 110th Ukrainian Militia Brigade. So this is 110th Ukrainian Militia Brigade, the same as 109th Ukrainian Militia Brigade. So in other words, the numbering is kind of becoming confusing, because before, everything below 100 was sort of regular troops, and above 100 was militia brigades. And now apparently, well, with the exception of 128th brigade, but now there's another one, 110th brigade, mechanized brigade. So that's getting a little bit more confusing. So just this is what we're talking about: 110th brigade, 71st brigade, and 61st brigade. So 71st is operating somewhere on Izyum bridgehead apparently, and 61st somewhere on the Zaporizhia front line, and 110th somewhere west of Donetsk. We're not sure 100%, but that's approximate location of those units. based on our understanding. Now let's move to Kherson bridgehead. Things here are sort of stable, no new Russian advances. They continue shelling Pervomaiski. Ukrainian command continues attacks against the bridges. There's also a river Konka here that's kind of like going parallel to Dnipro on the eastern side. And there is basically another bridge. So to get to Antonievsky Bridge, there is another bridge over this river Konka. So that was attacked as well. We don't know the results, but we would assume that it was damaged. It was the first attack based on our information. So as we can see, the rockets are not powerful enough to destroy the concrete structures at the first sort of pass. So it probably will take many more attacks before that they will be able to really destroy it enough not to be able to make it impossible for their equipment. That's it for the day. Thanks for watching, and until tomorrow. Bye bye.